Zeri, Olaf, Ryze, and Kog'Maw have been issued hotfix changes, while the Grievous Wounds nerfs have made enchanters even more OP than before. Bel'Veth has also been released, but we'll be holding off on any rating until 12.12. There's a ton of emerging trends to cover as we reach the midpoint of 12.11, so let's break it all down and update the tier list thanks to the help of our challenger players and utilizing the most recent data. But before we get into it, be sure to check out SkillCapped if you want to truly get better at League of Legends. We're the only service that offers a money-back guarantee if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service. We do this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't work for you, you shouldn't pay. Learn more at the end of this video or click the link in the description below. The Kench has most definitely been unbenched for 12.11, as his direct buffs combined with the tank item buffs have given him an immense power spike. All tank mythics saw their health increased by 100, and this is great on its own, but helps someone like Tom even more due to health scaling on his abilities. Thornmail and Randuin's were even buffed, so there were a ton of different changes that heavily favored Tom this patch. Tom is actually one of the few top laners who's seeing positive results into Fiora right now, so if you're in need of a good answer, look no further. We had moved Tom into S tier for the pre-patch tier list, but we'll be shifting him up even further and into OP for mid-patch. More commonly seen as a jungler, Zac top lane is a pick that should not be slept on in 12.11. Zac has seen a considerable boost in power for many of the same reasons we discussed for Tom. Zac has health scaling built into his kit, so the added health on tank items not only makes him more difficult to kill, but adds extra damage to his combo. Grievous Wounds were nerfed as well, which indirectly buffs Zac even more, while Spirit Visage had its magic resist increased. The item combination of Sunfire and Demonic Embrace is completely insane right now and is leading to ridiculous results for Zac. You run Conqueror as the keystone so that your extended fight power is absolutely godlike. Although Zac jungle players max E out first, make sure you're maxing W first when playing Zac top lane, as it's your main damage source and allows you to skirmish very well. Look to ban out Mord or Olaf if you plan on playing Zac top, but other than that, his matchups are quite solid. You'll find Zac in our S tier as a highly underrated top lane carry for 12.11. Although Riot tried to tone down Olaf at the start of 12.11, they missed the mark pretty hard, so another round of hotfix nerfs are needed. Q armor reduction is being lowered from 20 scaling to 30% down to 20% at all ranks. W shield missing health scaling is going from 22.5% to 17.5%. Warranted nerfs for sure, but how impactful will they actually be? Once again, they're nerfs that target Olaf's late game more so than the early stages, so we can't see the changes being enough to push Olaf down the tier list very far, as he'll be moving into S. Top lane tier list has a few minor adjustments for mid-patch, but nothing too crazy. Tom is joining Fiora and Darius in the OP tier, while Kayle drops into S as the hotfix nerfs from 12.10, combined with the Riftmaker nerfs in 12.11, have seen her lose a good chunk of power. Direct buffs along with Blade of the Ruined King changes have seen Aurelia gain some power for 12.11, so she'll be moving into B tier. For any Gwen mains out there, this patch has absolutely killed her solo Q viability. Not only was Gwen directly nerfed, but her core item in Riftmaker was targeted as well, so she has fallen to the depths of C tier. Garen, Mordekaiser, and Olaf are our top 3 low elo recommendations for top lane. You can't really go wrong with using your ban on one of Olaf, Fiora, or Darius. Tanks, tanks, and more tanks is the theme for jungle this patch, and Nunu is one who's absolutely loving 12.11. Who would have thought that directly buffing Nunu and also buffing his main core items would lead to him dominating the meta? Apparently not Riot, so take advantage of Nunu's power while you can. Nunu will be moving all the way into OP tier for mid-patch. We mentioned in our pre-patch tier list that Night Harvester junglers would see a nice rise in power, and that's been exactly the case for Elise. Ability haste is a very important stat for Elise, as she needs her rotation of spells to be effective. Cocoon coming back off cooldown even a fraction of a second earlier can make or break skirmishes, so she's been loving the buff in 12.11. The buff wasn't enough to turn Elise into an OP pick, but she'll be moving from A into S for mid-patch. Jungle sees quite a few interesting alterations, as Nunu and Diana are moving into OP tier alongside Volibear and Wukong. We brought it up last patch, but we gotta bring it up again, as Tank Diana is the most broken sleeper build of 12.11. It was already good in 12.10, but now that Sunfire was buffed, it's a build you need to try out. Many other traditional tanks like Volibear, Rammus, Skarner, Zac, and Amumu have all seen a drastic uptick in strength due to the tank item buffs. As for Taliyah, Riot ended up issuing more nerfs than what we expected, so she has fallen way harder as a result. Originally, Riot only had plans to nerf Taliyah's ultimate, but they added on a base health nerf along with Q nerfs, which has seen her fall pretty miserably. The top 3 low elo jungle picks of the patch are Rammus, Volibear, and Shyvana. Consider using your ban on one of Volibear, Diana, or Wukong. A brand new Yone build has started popping up over the past few patches, and it's leading to a significant rise in strength. Blade of the Ruined King Rush is the unique aspect of the build, and with the item buffed in 12.11, the setup has become even better. After Blade, it's standard from then on out with an Immortal Shield Bow and Infinity Edge. Since Blade provides % health damage, it has more value now after the durability update, especially against champs who will be rushing a health item. Your drawn-out dueling power with Blade and lethal tempo stacked is super nice too. We'll be shifting Yone one tier, going from A into S for mid-patch. Like we mentioned when covering jungle, Taliyah ended up being hit with more nerfs than we expected, so her power level has dropped off significantly. The Q and base health nerfs were added on top of the ultimate nerf, which has in turn dropped Taliyah's power to the bottom percentile. B tier is where you will find Taliyah for mid-patch. We mentioned in our pre-patch tier list how Singed would be one to watch with the chem tank buffs, and he's looking ridiculously strong. Singed doesn't care at all about the Riftmaker changes because he just builds the buffed chem tank instead, and can also abuse Demonic Embrace, which is so broken after the durability changes. Mid-Singed is your prototypical solo queue stomper, as his perma-shove and roam playstyle works way too well. You start the game off with boots and take Predator as your keystone so that you can roam as early as level 2. Nobody expects it either, especially in the lower ranks, so you can cheese out so many early kills. The build for Singed is very unique, as you want to rush Rylai's, go into Turbo Chem Tank second, and round out the core with Demonic Embrace. Keystone Rune is of course Predator, and make sure to grab Ingenious Hunter so that the cooldown on Chem Tank and Predator actives are much lower. A couple alterations to the mid lane tier list for 12.11, as Taliyah drops down, and moving into OP tier are Swain and Victor. Is it really a league patch without some minor rise buffs that accomplish absolutely nothing? Q cooldown is being lowered by 1 second, while E damage is going up in the later ranks. Not changes we see making a serious impact on Ryze's solo Q strength, so continue to stay away. Sylas buffs have been extremely positive and has him moving into a strong S tier position. Kassadin has become much better with a Crown Rush for 12.11 as a result of the Everfrost nerf and Crown buff. Ludens or Crown should now be prioritized over Everfrost on Cass. Riot ended up delaying the Assassin buff, so champions like Zed, Talon, Akali, and Fizz are still on the weaker side of things. Mages continue to be the frontrunners for 12.11 even after the Liandry's nerfs. Top 3 low elo carries for mid lane are Veigar, Malz, and Annie. Yone, Victor, and Kassadin are top priority bans of the patch. Let's admit it, we definitely saw Zeri rising in power for 12.11, but an 8% win rate spike is not what we expected. More damage for less utility has been an extremely positive trade-off, so much that a hotfix nerf has already been issued. Zeri's QAD is going from 110 scaling to 130% to 105 scaling to 125%. Passive max health damage drops from 3 scaling to 15% to 1 scaling to 15%. E cooldown is increased from 22 scaling to 16 to 24 scaling to 18 seconds. Prior to these nerfs, Zeri had eclipsed a 54% win rate, so even with these changes, we still expect her to be a top tier ADC, just not Giga OP. If you haven't been keeping up with Zeri over the past couple patches, her build has completely shifted from Bruiser over to Crit. There's actually a lot of variations to the build going around, so let's give you a few to try out. Shield Bow into Phantom Dancer and Infinity Edge is the cookie cutter setup you can't really go wrong with. If you're feeling spicy and don't need the durability from Shield Bow, then Kraken Slayer can be your rush. Against a heavy tanky enemy comp, swapping Phantom Dancer for Hurricane is a great idea. And for some stronger upfront burst when playing into squishier comps, an Essence Reaver's second item can work great. The best rune page is Lethal Tempo with Resolve secondary, so if you are someone who's running Domination secondary, look to swap over. As a result of the hotfix changes, Zeri will be placed in A tier as a good ADC pickup. So for the complete ADC tier list, Jhin and Twitch are the most broken picks of the patch. Cog nerf saw him lose a considerable amount of power, so Riot is immediately hotfix buffing him back up by adding some % health damage onto his W. Aphelios and Caitlyn buffs have had the complete opposite effect of Zeri, as their changes did not move the needle enough to see a bump up the tier list. Best low elo ADCs for 12.11 are Veigar, Misfortune, and Zeri. Jhin, Twitch, or Lucian are all good bans to consider for ADC this patch. You're either ecstatic about the support meta or absolutely hating it right now. There's really no in between. This is because enchanters have become even better for 12.11, and Yuumi is one of them. Grievous wounds being nerfed have allowed these healing supports to rise in power. Their heals are stronger, and since you no longer have to build Chemtech Putrefier, they also provide their carries with more damage. Ardent Sensor is so much stronger as a second pickup now, and it allows you to buff up your teammates even more. As a result, Yuumi makes her way into S tier for 12.11. Another support who has benefited greatly this patch is Taric. Taric received a couple nice direct buffs and then is also loving the fact Grievous Wounds are no longer as effective. Let's not forget Zeke's Convergence and Knight's Vow were buffed as well, so there were a ton of indirect buffs to Taric in 12.11. For a phenomenal answer to engage supports like Nautilus, Thresh, Pike, or Blitzcrank, Taric is a champion well worth spending the time on. Taric makes his way into a strong S tier position for mid-patch. The OP tier for support consists of Yuumi, Soraka, Senna, Janna, and Renata Glask. Senna nerfs were nothing more than a little tickle, so there's no reason to stop playing her if you've been having success. Zilean drops down, not because he's become significantly weaker, it's just that healing enchanters like Yuumi and Soraka take precedent after all the 12.11 changes. For the first patch in a while, we no longer have one of Blitz, Thresh, Nautilus, or Leona in the S tier or higher. It's been a really tough couple of patches for these engaged supports, and even after the Zeke's buff, it hasn't helped them all that much. Soraka, Brand, and Zyra are three of the best supports to climb low elo the fastest. Renata Glask, Soraka, and Senna are all great ban options. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about SkillCapped. So, we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week, with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent challenger players into Elo Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. So there's your mid-patch tier list update for 12.11. Now that you're completely up to speed with the solo queue meta, good luck on the Rift, and we'll catch you in the next one.